Hello everyone, myself Gaurangi Kushwa, and today I'm again back with my new video on liability under law of tort. In this video, basically, we'll be talking about strict liability and absolute liability. Let's move forward. Generally, a person is liable for his own wrongful act and does not incur any liability for the acts done by others. In certain cases, like vicarious liability, the liability of one person for the act done by another person may arise. Liability can be further classified into strict liability and absolute liability. Strict liability. It's a kind of liability under which a person is legally responsible for the consequences flowing from an activity, even in the absence of fault or criminal intent on the part of the defendant. It is basically a legal doctrine that holds a party responsible for its actions without the plaintiff having to prove the negligence or fault on the part or defendant. When any person involved in ultra hazardous activities such as keeping any wild animals, using explosives, or making defective products, then she may be held liable if any other person is injured because of that activity, even if the defendant took necessary precautions and followed safety requirements. In the case of Raylands versus Fletcher, the defendant got a reservoir constructed through independent contractor. There were old unused shafts under the site of the reservoir, which the constructor failed to observe and so did not block them. When the water was filled in the reservoir, it burst through the shafts and flooded the plaintiff's coal mines and adjoining land. So the defendant did not know about the shaft and had not been negligent, but he was held liable. This is so called the no fault liability. I repeat it again, no fault liability. In the given case, the liability recognized was strict liability. That is, even if the defendant was not negligent or did not cause any intentional harm, he could still be liable under the rule. So here are some essentials of strict liability. Let's have a look upon them. For the application of the rule, the following three essentials should be there. First is dangerous things. According to this rule, the liability for the escape of anything from one's land arises only when the thing collected was a dangerous thing. In Raylands versus Fletcher, the thing was a large water body that was reservoir. The rule is also applied to gas, electricity, vibration, sewage, explosive, etc. Second, escape. For the rule in Raylands versus Fletcher to apply, it is also essential that the thing causing the damage must escape the area outside the occupation and control of the defendant. The case of the Reed versus Lyons and Company is an example of no escape and hence no liability. In this case, the plaintiff was an employee in the defendant's ammunition factory while she was performing her duties inside the defendant's premises. A shell which was being manufactured there exploded and she was injured. There was no evidence of negligence on the part of the defendant. It was held that the defendant was not liable because there was no escape of anything outside the defendant's premises. So, the rule of Raylands versus Fletcher did not apply to this case. Third point is non natural use of land. Yes, there should be non-natural use of land to make the defendant liable, like Raylands versus Fletcher case. Collecting the large body of water is considered to be non-natural of use of land. So, exceptions to the rule of strict liability. First is act of God. Act of God was also considered to be a defense against the action of strict liability if the escape has been unforeseen and takes place because of the supernatural forces without any human intervention. Then the defense of act of God can be pleaded. Second is consent of the plaintiff. When the plaintiff has consented to the accumulation of the dangerous things on the defendant's land, the liability under the rule does not arise. Such consent is applied when the source of danger is for the common benefit of both the plaintiff and the defendant. Third is act of third party. If the harm has been caused due to the act of any stranger who is neither the defendant's servant nor the defendant has any control over them, the defendant will not be liable for this rule. Thus, in Box versus Chubb, the overflow from the defendant's reservoir was caused by the blocking of the drain by strangers. The defendant was not held liable for that. Fourth, fourth is statutory authority. An act done under the authority of state is a defense for up to an action for tort. The defense is also available when the action is under the rule of Raylands versus Fletcher. Statutory authority, however, cannot be pleaded as a defense when there is a negligence. So, fifth point is plaintiff's own default. Damage caused by escape due to the plaintiff's own default was considered to be a good defense in Raylands versus Fletcher case. If the plaintiff suffers damage by his own intrusion into the defendant's property, he cannot complain for the damage so caused. Now, let us talk about absolute liability. Absolute liability, the rule of absolute liability in simple words can be defined as the rule of strict liability minus the exception. In India, the rule of absolute liability evolved in the case of MC Mehta versus Union of India. The facts of the case are that some oleum gas leaked in the particular area in Delhi from industry. Due to the leakage, many people were affected. The Apex Code then evolved the rule of absolute liability on the rule of strict liability and stated that the defendant would be liable for the damage caused without considering the exceptions to the strict liability rule. Also, there's a very famous case that is Bhopal gas tragedy. This rule was upheld in the infamous Bhopal gas tragedy, which took place between the night of 2nd and 3rd December 1984. A leakage of methyl poisonous gas from the Union Cambridge Company in Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh, led to a major disaster. Over 3,000 people lost their lives. There were heavy loss to property, flora, and fauna. A case was filed in the American New York District Court as the Union Carbide Company in Bhopal was a branch of the US based Union Carbide Company. The case was dismissed owing to no jurisdiction. The government of India enacted the Bhopal Gas Disaster Act 1985 and sued the company for damages on behalf of the victims. The court, applying the principle of absolute liability, held the company liable and ordered it to pay compensation to the victims. Now let's study about the vicarious liability. Yes, the rule of vicarious liability imposes liability on the person of the act done by another person. Normally, a person who has done the wrongful act should alone be made liable for the injurious consequences arising out of it. But the principle of vicarious liability is an exception to it. In order to hold a person liable for the act done by another person, it is necessary that there should be certain kind of relationship between the two person, and wrongful act done should be in a certain way connected with that relationship. The common examples of such relation is included principal agent relationship, master servant relationship, and partners. So first is principal agent relationship, where an act is authorized by the principal and done by the agent, both of them are liable. The authority to do any act may be express or implied. When an agent does a wrongful act in ordinary course of the performance of this duty as an agent, the principal shall held liable for such an act. However, there is no doubt that the agent is also liable for his act. Thus, their liability is joint on several. In Lloyd versus Great Smith and Company 1912, Mrs. Lloyd, who owned a two cottage but was not satisfied with the returns, their firm approached the office of Grace Smith and Company, a firm of solicitor, to consult them about the matter of property. The managing clerk of the company attended her and advised her to sell two cottages and invest the money in a better way. She was asked to sign two documents which was supposed to sell deeds. In fact, the document that got signed would give deeds in the name of managing clerk himself. He then disposed the property and misappropriate the proceeds. He had acted solely for his personal benefit and without the knowledge of his principal. It was held that since the agent was acting in the course of his employment, apparently and ostensibly, the principal was held liable for the fraud. So, by this is a point. And the second here is partners. The relationship between partners is that the principal and agent. Therefore, the rules of the law of agency apply in case of liability also for the tort committed by any partner in the ordinary course of business and the firm. The other entire partners are liable for to the same extent as a guilty partner. The liability of each partner is joint and several. Third is master servant relationship. If the servant does wrongful act in the course of his employment, the master is liable for that. Though the servant is also liable, the wrongful act of the servant is deemed to be the act of the master as well. The doctrine of liability of the master act is of his servant passed on the maxim responded superior, which means the let the principal be liable, and it puts the master in the same position as if he had done the act himself. It also derives validity from the maxim qui facit per elium facit per se, which means he who does an act through another is deemed in law to do it himself. There are two essentials which should be satisfied by the plaintiff before he can succeed against the defendant, fixing vicarious liability on him or for any wrongful act done by the later servant, which are as follows. First is he must establish the relation of master and servant subsisted between the defendant and the actual wrongdoer. He must also prove the wrongful act done by the servant whilst he was engaged in the course of employment of the defendant. So, by this, I end my video here and I hope that you all have understood well. So, thank you so much and stay safe, stay healthy.